All right. Welcome, Cosette Lambourne, to the Real Estate Success Podcast. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for inviting me. It's an honor.
Of course. I'm excited to have you here. I feel like not only is your career speak for itself, also just your passion for life and joy and kind of the stuff we were talking about before we hit record, I feel like really is super powerful stuff. So I'm excited to share that with the listeners. To get started, why don't you tell us about just who you are personally? Tell us about your family, just who is Cosette Lambourne?
Sure. Yeah. So I was born one of 6 kids to a military family. So very accustomed to moving around, adapting, and meeting new people, which definitely became a helpful thing throughout my career in making connections with people. My dad retired in Norfolk, so that's how we ended up here in Virginia. I was a young mom, came out of high school as a mother, and was married with 3 kids by 25. I joke that I don't like to take time getting to my destinations. It really started crafting my life, my purpose, being a young mom. That became my big why, right? To provide. And my kid's father and I, we were self-employed. We had a construction company, did investments, real estate. I got licensed at 19, actually. And so we just had a home of entrepreneurship and business ownership. And my children were all kind of raised in that environment. So, whether we were throwing a baby seat in the truck, going to a job site, or taking a kid to a house that we were flipping and, sweeping floors, whatever it was, the kids were in tow. Mixed in with, of course, sports and everything else that we could, jam into that world. And my first career, I was a paralegal, a divorce paralegal, actually. And I loved that life, that work, and was really close to going into law. And my boss at the time had wanted me to go to law school, partner up, and go that direction. I loved the paperwork side. I didn't like the litigation. I don't like, contention and court and all of that kind of stuff. So
I'm shocked you like paperwork.
I love paperwork. I'm a spreadsheets person, actually. I like numbers. But through that experience was when my ex and we bought our first home. I think we were 20 years old, and started our construction company, and we did a live-in flip. And my daughter Erica, she was 1 year old, in there with us. We flipped that house. Bought it for $56,000, lived in it, sold it the next year for $98,000, and that was just the catalyst that sent us in that direction.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so real estate, before I was ever like a career realtor, has always been in my life, and I think anybody in real estate or investing can attest that there's seasons. Like I've probably had 3 lifetimes of different real estate careers, so it's always changing. It's something you can always pivot. You can always, go into different niches or specialties. And so fast forward, as life would have it, I went through a divorce in my early 30s. And that's the day that I actually went and signed on with Keller Williams. And I loved, I'd been at 100% company, just working, investments and friends and family when they came along. And that worked for that phase of my life. And then, but I wanted to go into, being a career real estate agent. And I joke that I traded my truck and trailer for stilettos and a pencil skirt. But that's like Keller Williams really opened my eyes to how to build a big business through real estate. And I was already entrepreneurial. I already knew how to run businesses. I had subcontractors, all that kind of stuff in the construction world. So it all just kind of matched. And I'm a builder, type of mindset. I like to always be building something, have my hands in something. So it just fit. And as life would have it, again, I think, they say success leaves clues. Everywhere I've worked or gone, I've ended up in management, in leadership. I'm a big team player. I say, middle of 6 kids, there's no I. There's nothing brand new. I grew up on hand-me-downs, So in Keller Williams, I ended up quickly finding my way into leadership and just kind of climbing the ranks and getting exposed to all kinds of different positions, and then getting involved with associations and different foundations and things, sitting on boards. anywhere that I could get experience and have, my hand in making a difference, making an impact. And that was the next decade of my life. And I absolutely love that time. I think one of my biggest passions and motivators is being able to inspire and empower others, being able to pour into others. We were talking about being parents, and I think, like, what do we want for our kids? We want better for them than what we had, or we want them to learn a little easier than the ways we had to learn, and so forth. And I think we have a duty and a responsibility just in a community as people to pour our gifts into others, to help, take the experiences we've had to help educate others so that they can learn. I say that I learn my lessons well. I don't sit in the in the stuff. I like to keep it moving. Adapt, learn, and apply as quickly as possible, and just keep things moving forward. And forward progress is how we get to our goals, our dreams, our aspirations.
There's so much there that you just said, mostly because we walked through your whole life, or at least your career, and I'm impressed by so many pieces of it, especially the fact that you clearly are, through multiple threads, like entrepreneurial, builder, giver, like leader, fast-paced, like always moving. And I believe that, like you said, a lot of that probably comes from one of 6 kids. You're like, we're controlled chaos.
Yes.
We have 2 at home, and I'm like, everything's on fire all the time. I don't know what we do.
Oh yeah.
But I'm impressed and shocked by the fact that at a young age of 19, 20, you already had the entrepreneurial itch when your parents were military, which is like almost the furthest thing from entrepreneurial. It's very like, here's your path, here's your role. Where do you think that came from inside you? They're like, we're just going to do this ourselves and kind of build it. Because I do believe some people are hardwired that way, but it is a path that for many people tends to be scary, tends to be, I like the idea of this, but the idea of not having the safety net of a paycheck or benefits or things like that is really
scary.
It's scary. And you jumped in right fresh, first thing. So tell me about the starting point. I definitely want to get to the leadership at Keller Williams. I want to, there's so many pieces to this, but that was one thing that stood out to me, which was, you're telling me at 19 you started with a construction company? Like, that is wild.
Yeah. Well, my dad was very big in finance. He's a pilot. He was a pilot in the military, had his MBA. I think the first lesson I ever learned in finance was tithing, right? At 8 years old, I can remember my parents sitting me down and saying, 10% of your earnings are for the Lord, And then my brain, it's like everything clicked. And it's not dollars, but numbers, like, okay, but wait a minute. If I have $1, then I really have 90 cents, which means I can't really buy something for $1. And then there's tax at the dollar store. So really I need $1.05. So really I need to make $1.25 so I can pay the tax and the tithing and have my, right? So that was my first lesson. And from there, like, everything just kind of clicked. And when I worked for the attorney, I became his office manager as well. So I was doing the payroll. I was also doing their garnishments, and then doing LLCs and S corps. So I would watch everybody build these businesses, and it was like, for what? Like, it was a curious thing. Like, somebody's just, today it's a landscaping company, tomorrow it's something else. I have to give my kid's dad a lot of credit. His family was in real estate and had investment properties. So he was raised on build wealth, right? Like, own something, don't rent something. And like you just pointed out with military, my dad, they rented everywhere we went until he retired. So you're absolutely correct in that aspect. And then for me, again, with working for a lawyer, it was just seeing so many people come through that owned their own businesses. I literally incorporated at that law firm our first construction company and had our first S corp at 19 years old, but it was like all the tools are right there in front of me if all these people are doing it, and I'm the one paid to push the paper. Why can't I do it too?
I hear that a lot. That piece of, like, I was exposed to it through, like, we had someone else on the podcast prior who she was maybe a transaction coordinator or head of marketing at another brokerage and was like, I'm basically training people on how to do this. I'm seeing what they do and make. I could do that.
Right.
And it is this scary, elusive thing until you see it being done. You're like, oh, these are the steps. Mm-hmm. You already had the numbers. Like, this is what how I have to manage my taxes and my giving. And, whereas, I feel like many people kind of get intimidated by that. Almost like the first time I bought a house, I was like, how do I go from not owning a home to having a mortgage? What is escrow? How do I, what's a deed and a title? And, why do I need insurance for my title? All these things. But then you go through it and you're like, okay, this makes a lot more sense. Now I can understand the pieces of this. Now it's not intimidating. Mm-hmm. I feel like it's very similar for self-employment. So it sounds like from an early age, you kind of had the financial wherewithal. Then you were in the law office kind of seeing business owners establishing LLCs, establishing corporations.
Side of it,
yeah.
Absolutely.
And then
how to sue people and take their money through garnishments. I was really good at that too. So now I know how to not do that.
Yeah. Practically knowing this is now what I avoid.
Exactly. Because there's always two sides to that coin.
Totally.
Right? Like I tell my kids all the time, you can learn from everyone, even if it's what not to do. Right. Yeah. And speaking of kids, so coming straight out of my parents' house, we bought a home versus renting, right? And then my oldest child, Erica, when she graduated from college and she got her first job in Charlotte, rather than going and paying over $2,000 a month in rent, we went and bought a house. Mm-hmm. And then she was able to be exposed to what's a deed. She didn't like any of it. She's like, this is stupid. Why do we have to pay taxes and insurance? And what do you mean? What is this MIP, MPI? Like, what? And so, but it gave her the experience of home ownership. Mm-hmm. It gave her the experience of, she's actually an interior designer. So she had designed and staged the entire property and then moved out and turned it into an Airbnb. So at 23 years old, she had an Airbnb in her name.
That's awesome.
And she managed it. She paid the bills. She did the cleaning. Like, mom just co-signed. I didn't lift a finger. She got all that exposure. She now knows she does not like property management.
Sure. Many of us don't.
But she loves interior design and she's super, super good at it. So it's like, what's fun about, kind of my next chapter and legacy with my family, I look at all my children and it's like all my life I've been looking for the perfect business partner, right? We can't do everything ourselves. I've built businesses for other people. I've helped people build their own businesses. And now I have an opportunity to build something completely mine that I want to stand the test of time, right? Like well beyond me, and leave that impact. And okay, so I've got a kid that excels at this. Okay, that's your department. I've got a kid that excels at this. Okay, that can be your department, right? So we don't have to, it took me a long time, probably till my early 40s to realize I don't have to be everything. I don't have to do it all. I don't have to be the pro at all of it. I just need the right people. And that is definitely a testament to any success I've had is always finding the right people that have been there at the right time. Even if it's just people that help motivate you or inspire you.
Yeah.
You know? I think it's very important, the sphere that you keep around you.
I totally agree. They say you become, the closest people you have around you. And what I love about that is for most entrepreneurs, especially most like solopreneurs, when they start that way, it's really hard to let go. And you are like, I am a realtor and a bookkeeper and an accountant and a marketer and, a transaction coordinator and a client communications director and I'm everything.
All the hats.
Yeah. You're like, I'm a firefighter. I'm a counselor and a therapist half the time for people. And it is that like you will become the bottleneck of your own business, which like you've spoken to becomes the bottleneck of your whole legacy of like, what are you really building here? Are you just producing transactions to make more money to just have, or are you really building something that is wealth for you, legacy for your family, legacy for your community? Like, what are you really trying to build here? And if you're going to bottleneck that yourself because you haven't put the people in place or you haven't been open to that,
then you're only stifling your own success and progress. Yeah.
And that's a lesson I've had to learn as I'm like, okay, how do I bring on a team? How do I, put people around me in my personal life and professional life, but in a way that fosters more flourishing for them, for me, for my clients, for the people we get to serve, for our community. It's almost like a hard initial hill, but once you get over that,
Right.
you almost see like, oh, we're unlocking, we just hit, 10x the speed. It's an exponential benefit. And for you to be able to do that with your kids,
Yeah.
I mean, talk about real generational wealth, and not even just wealth from a financial perspective, although that could be, hopefully that's also it, but like wealth in the form of relationship, being in business together as a family, as, getting to do this with your kids, the relation, there's just so much richness there that
Oh, yeah.
is so far beyond
It's my favorite
dollars
word.
and cents.
You don't have to be rich to live a rich life.
Yeah.
Right? Like you can define that. And I think that's something I've mastered. I mean, you don't have to be a millionaire to make Facebook to look like a millionaire type of thing. And we see that all the time, But it's the quality of life. It's the standard of life you have. If we have dinner at my house, it's an event. It's not just, dinner. Like everything is all the way when it comes to me, especially because as your kids get older, that I might only see them once a week or once a month, or if my daughter's coming home, like we go all out, we're going to make it an experience. I think that's the key, is having experiences and an experiential life.
Yeah.
And then it's quite a blessing that I had kids early on, because there's perks to having kids later in life and enjoying that phase. There's perks to having kids early. Whenever it happens, it's just the right time, and it's got to be the right thing, right? Because that's just what's happening.
Yeah.
But each one of my kids were working by 14 years old, Erica. So it's like, oh, they didn't even have cars. Erica was teaching piano lessons to neighborhood kids. My daughter Ashley started her own cleaning company, which she still does to this day. And then my son would go on job sites with his dad. And I can tell you, since like 13, 14 years old, not one of my kids has asked me for a dime. They're all financially independent adults.
That's awesome.
And they're all debt free. I got a 26-year-old doesn't have a credit card. None of them have a car payment. Now we all need credit, right?
Yeah.
So a couple years back,
But there's other ways to get credit.
Exactly. A couple years ago, you want parenting tip? I went and got a credit card, put all their names on it. And like, if you have an emergency or you go to the dentist, use that one. And now they all have over 800 credit scores, but they don't have any debt.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
there's absolutely ways, that we can set our kids up and our future generations for success and then pay it forward. We hear about these generational curses, and it's like, no, we're not. They say that most people grow up to live in the same size house that they grew up in, right? So maybe that's a settling. Maybe you aspire for more, right? But when we fall into a pattern and a rhythm of whatever was, just in our environment growing up, right? We can do the same. We can do better. We always strive to do better, but I want to take all the pieces of everything I loved from my childhood and the way I was raised and pour them into my kids, but then add some more.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's the key, is just to always be pouring more in and giving them the best tools.
Which I love hearing you say that. And even just your thought process, like you're just thinking so much further in advance than present. One of this is a financial psychology study, came out maybe like 7 years ago, where it talked about like key questions to be asking your clients or someone. And it's, hey, when it comes to money, how far in advance do you think? Is it days? Is it weeks? Is it months, years, decades, generations? But the key to that, the study that came out, was basically saying if someone is when they think about their money, whether it's their checking account, their investments, whatever, if it's less than a year, typically that's promoting some sort of scarcity mindset that may not even be tied to the truth. Like they may have enough money to do whatever they want. You'll have millionaires who say, I think about it in days, weeks, months. And the thing about that is when you're in a scarcity mindset, you're locked in and you'll likely make short-term decisions that can cost you because you're being more reactive. It promotes a scarcity and a reactionary response. Whereas when you have someone who thinks years, decades, generations, the further out you go, typically that person will be mathematically more successful, but also it's because they have more of an abundance mindset to themselves. They believe, again, it may not even be true. We've got people who it's like, you actually don't have enough money for right now. Right. But they're thinking the right way to say, there's enough. I have enough. I am enough for the present. And I can begin to think and dream bigger And therefore, they don't make as many mistakes because they're not as reactive. They're a lot more proactive. So it's this interesting, like when you begin to meet someone who's thinking like you do, thinking about how do I build something that's going to stand the test of time, that's bigger than myself, that's longer than myself. How do I set my kids up for success in the future? Those are driving factors that stem from an abundance mindset, but also produce, so much more richness along the way than hey, what are we going to do next year? What are we going to do in 6 months? That kind of thing.
Well, I teach my kids this actually. Do not make long-term decisions based on short-term issues, right? And I actually just had this conversation with my middle daughter, and I was like, it's okay to make a short-term decision that lines with a longer term. It's okay to rent this one place for a couple of weeks because it gets you where you need to be until, because she's nickel and diming and stuff. And it's like, if there's a bigger cause. And so, one of the things is don't have all your income in one basket, right? Because you've got to have legs to it. You've got to be multifaceted, because if one falls, you don't want to set yourself up for everything to crumble. You need to have, other support. And then, I was just raised in that type of family where, like, my parents had a year's worth of food storage at all times. So, and my parents, they would practice hurricanes and stuff. I would come home on a Friday, like 15 years old, you come home on a Friday and all the power's out and the water's turned off. And it's like, what is going on? Like, the rest of the neighborhood's okay. They're like, hey, we're going to practice natural disaster today.
Honestly, though, if a natural disaster hits, I'm coming to you.
I'm going to my parents. They got the canoe for the floods. They have it all, right? The machines. I mean, my mom had a wheat machine if she had to actually grind wheat, to make flour.
Wild.
Yeah. So, and now I live in a home where, like, we don't have canned goods. Everything's fresh. Everything's healthy. So I'm like, okay, what types of things, like, we could survive for a month, with food and stuff. But it is that mentality. But it's also, I don't know where or what you were doing during the recession, 08, 09, right? So my ex and I were in the height of construction, and we were flipping a house. We were supposed to make like 60 grand on it in like 3 months. The whole market flipped. And I remember it was the last flip we did. We got a check at the closing table for like 32 cents.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So it was wild. But during that time, like, everybody was in financial hardship, especially if you're a builder, houses were sitting dilapidated and stuff. And, but I turned to the kids, and in my mind and in their memories, it was some of the best times we had, because we had to figure out how to have fun on a dime or no dime, right?
Yeah.
Like, picnics at the beach are free. Like, there's so many things you can do. And the richness of their life and their childhood reflected it. But I learned that from my parents, right? How to never, I actually have a mantra I say every morning, like, I have everything I need. At all times, I have everything that I need. And if you believe that, it will be that.
Yeah,
right?
Totally.
And you'll find a way. Or you can sit in victimhood and say, I don't have this and I don't have that. This year I'm going through this transition coming out. I've decided to come out of all leadership, unrelated to what's not mine, right? So I've had quite a few interesting opportunities opened up to me, quite a few offers, and I've turned them all down because it's still building for somebody else. It's still doing something for somebody else, even though it could bring a lucrative, situation to my life. I'm prepared enough to not have to make a short-term decision, right, that's going to affect my long-term, because my eyes are, on the prize and on my future and what I want to do.
Which, A, is commendable, because it's really hard to pass opportunity. I find that. And I find it's just in general, we're a society that really struggles to say no to things.
I suck at saying no.
Yeah. But when you have this abundance mindset, like, there's enough, I have enough. When you are taking radical ownership of your life and saying, I'm building something, and you have that, vision set down the line, once the vision is clear, the decisions are easy.
That's true.
And that doesn't make it necessarily feel good.
Right.
But it's once you're clear on where am I going, what am I building, then the decisions along the way of what serves that, what doesn't serve that, become easier along the way, because you're like, this just isn't part of that. And this is a wonderful opportunity. And maybe one day I won't I will wish I took this opportunity, but right now it doesn't align with where I'm going. I love that you mentioned victimhood, mostly because I was reading this book by Donald Miller called Hero on a Mission. It's a great book, but it talks a lot about like the 4 characters in every great story are a victim, a hero, a villain, and a guide. And it talks about how we all in our lives find ourselves circumstantially a victim to start. All great stories do. Harry Potter's an orphan under the stairs. You know, Frodo's given this big burden. Superman's an orphan. You know, everybody has got their kind of original victim story. And you can either choose to take the hero's journey. Like Harry Potter goes and almost gets murdered every year of school. It's like a horrible schooling experience. But he chooses to like rise above that and take that. But if you don't, if you stay in victimhood, you'll grow hardened and you'll become a villain.
Right.
Like all the stories now, like Joker, Maleficent, where it's like these were really just victims.
Right.
And it's like their background stories, they were a victim, but they never took the courage to say, I'm gonna own this and move forward and figure this out, and you become a villain.
Yeah.
So it's like from this place where like anybody can find a reason to say, I don't have enough money, I wasn't raised that way, I wasn't given that opportunity. You can stay there and eventually you'll become cynical and hardened and a villain, or you can take the journey and become a hero. And the longer you're the hero, eventually you'll then turn around to be the guide for the people behind you who are on their own journeys.
I love that.
And it's just something that's been on my mind for the last probably year and a half in my own journey of like, we are not victims. We have agency and choice, and we can set a vision and go toward that.
Well, and you get to write your own story.
Yeah.
You know, and that's funny because I'm reading a book that speaks to that. Like, we are the author of our life, our story. We are the main character, and everyone else is a side character in our story. We can choose to put somebody else as the main character. We can choose to make ourselves the victim or the hero or whatever, right? It's a mindset. And I think, like, growing up, you know, we moved every 3 years. So becoming adaptable, I think, is the key, because there's a meme thing that I love. It says everything is on the other side of fear. Right? So we get stuck in fear, and fear holds us still in that rut, and people are very complacent. I mean, I think 97% of people on the earth are a high S, right, in their disc. So they like, my husband is super high S, like, don't change, don't move the toaster, don't do it, you know, it's just not in his hardwiring. And for me, it's like, I like something different and always changing and flowing and fluidity. And I think when you've been through experience, you have to go through challenges, you have to fall down in order to get up and know, okay, I scraped my knees, they healed, now I know how to not do that again, type of thing. When I went through my divorce, like, it all happened on one day, unexpected. And that day, it was a Sunday, I got in my car, my truck with my kids, my clothes, and I had 2 things to my name, a real estate license and about $116 in my pocket.
Wow.
And I left. And I walked and left everything. I gave him everything.
Wow.
Because I knew I could do it. I knew I could start over, and I wanted him to have, you know, everything that he had built with construction, and let the kids and, you know, have all of that. And I knew I bet on myself. I had faith in myself that I could do it. And you know, a lot of people use the expression like, you know, when you hit rock bottom or something. I don't see it as rock bottom. Like, you're at a new starting point of a new chapter. You're just at ground zero, and there's nowhere to go but up, right? Yeah. And then it's like you have all these options, right? So I think that's what holds people in that complacent place in life, is the fear of the unknown, the fear of if they've got what it takes, right? And it's funny you talk about Harry Potter. My son plays video games, and it makes me think about, like, okay, every time you level up in some game or something, it's like you're stripped of your weapons, your money, you're at a harder level, and you're starting in a lower, you know, positioning, and it's like, but you have your skill set, right? Like, you just beat this level, so obviously you're ready for the next level. And I think that's what life does. My life, when I look back, you know, I'm a big journaler, it cycles in like 10-year increments, right? Like, I was married for 10 years. I was in leadership for 10 years. Like, and it seems like every 10 years, my life is ready for the next chapter level. Or the next level. Yeah. And just like you just had a baby, right? Yeah. Well, whether it's your first or your third, it's a whole new chapter.
Yeah,
and it's
totally.
completely different.
New capacity required.
That's right. And if you're wise, you take a step back and you look, you analyze, you adjust, like, you know, you get clarity around, okay, what are the environmental changes? What are the needs? What's the emotional need? What's the financial need? To me, money's just currency that makes life flow.
Yeah.
You know, it's just currency. And it sucks that every month we have to pay these bills to keep the lights on, but that's all it is, right? It's just currency.
Just a tool.
Right. The richness in life is our experiences, our relationships, our, you know, connections and what we choose to do with our gifts and our passions. That's what I think the real richness of life is.
Something you're hitting on that I think is really inspiring is this idea of like, okay, I'm at this new level and it's scary. It feels like maybe rock bottom or the beginning of a new foundation. And I think in that fear of the unknown, the fear of failure, like to me that signals imposter syndrome in a way. But recently that's another thing that I think I've been thinking about. I would love your thoughts on, but this idea that, you know, when you are experiencing imposter syndrome, it's not something to run from. It just tells you you're in the next big league. Like you are now in the next echelon or level.
Yeah.
And you have the tools with you, but clearly you are a little out of your league because you're on the next phase, like your son's video game. Yeah. It's like, okay, now I'm growing. Like imposter syndrome is a sign that you're growing and learning, and you might fail, but failure stands for, you know, first attempt in learning. And it's like, okay, so you're like,
write that one down.
Here we go. Like, but people, again, they shy away, they shrink back because like, because it feels uncomfortable. Nobody likes imposter syndrome. Nobody likes the fear of failure. Nobody likes fear in general. But, you know, we're told don't fear, you know, don't be discouraged, take courage, like move forward. And I just feel like you embody that.
Yeah, you got to embrace it a little, but don't down yourself. It's a natural course, you know, and like you said, it's the unknown. I mean, you're a kid at school and you get picked for the kickball, you know, team or whatever, and you've never kicked a ball before. You're scared, right?
Yeah,
like,
totally.
Type of thing, but you got to just go out there and give it your all. And I love your failure acronym because it's so true. Like, okay, well, that didn't work out perfectly, but now we adapt, adjust, and apply as quick as you can. Like, keep it moving forward. No, I absolutely love that.
When you were talking about earlier at the beginning of the episode, just like teaching your kids, you can learn from everything. I was thinking about that. And I just feel like all the things we're talking about, like being a hero of your own story, leveling up, being, you know, open to growing and learning, like all of that is what sets us up for, like you said, a rich life that's beyond, you know, what could be if we just settled for it. And I feel like in the idea of entrepreneurship, self-employment, real estate, I talk to a lot of people and it's like this business, similarly to money, is just a currency. Like this business, these transactions, whatever it is you're doing, is similarly just another tool, just another currency to be able to build the experiences, the relationships. Is this business you're building, you know, funneling you into, you know, something bigger than yourself, something bigger than your family, deeper relationships, bigger experiences. So for you, I'm shocked or just struck by how inspiring your story is, and the fact that, okay, we came out of high school, young family, you know, working for a lawyer, construction company, first 10 years, you know, building your family, divorced, move into real estate, powerhouse into real estate, really become a top producer, become a leader in your brokerage, in your business, in the association, and the community in this role. Now you're turning into the next phase, saying no to leadership roles to build things that serve you and your greater vision. I mean, it's just this powerful story, but what for you has surprised you the most about your whole journey?
That is such a good question. I think at the end of the day, it's ownership over everything that happens in your life, you know, having accountability, because so many people want to finger point or, you know, just not take accountability for what they have done, haven't done, and everything in between, right? And I think every step of the way, requires a step back. Again, back to journaling. What worked, what didn't work? How did I succeed today? How did I screw up today? What am I taking from that? And yeah, there's lows. Like I said, I don't use the expression hit rock bottom, but you're starting at square one, level zero again and again in a lot of different ways. If you look around, like having a baby or going through a divorce or having a job change or starting a new business, they're all scary starting from zero situations. And so there's a thing called rear view mirror syndrome, which is the victimhood, right? But you gotta look back long enough to see where you've been to know how to move forward, right? I always say, like, the secret sauce is in where the dust settles. If you just plow through life and you don't stop and look, hey, maybe my interaction with somebody hurt their feelings today and I would have never known if I didn't check on them. Or maybe, this project didn't land great, but I never stopped to look back and recap, right? So even in like running a leadership team, like they all knew we stop, we review, we recap. Every event, I don't care if it's a party, what did we do right? What did we do wrong? What can we do better? What did we forget? And I think that's been just the biggest learning lesson for me, because not all of them are positive, you know. When you stop and you have to stare yourself in the mirror, sometimes you see things, you're like, well, dang, yeah, I guess I could have done that better, or I didn't think about that, So having self-awareness, I think, is really huge, and I think a lot of people just shy away from that. If I've tried to always be someone that you could approach, talk to, and I would listen, hear, adapt, adjust, and apply, But I think that's probably, in coaching people for 10 years, it's the ones that don't take ownership over their actions that will still be in the same spot. Yeah.
So this is a podcast about success. And if you poll anybody on the side of the road and say, how do you define success? You're going to get a different answer from everybody, because it can be so individualized. But for you, how would you define success?
Success is defined by joy now. It took me 44 years, but it is defined by joy. And joy is different than happiness. Happiness is I'm happy in the moment and it can fleet, right? But joy is something that's inside you that you carry that nobody can mess with. And you can choose to exude that joy or to shut it off, right? So, same thing. I've talked to so many people over the years, and when I would ask, what are your goals? What are your aspirations? Because I'm here to coach you on how to build your business and achieve them. I would say the majority of people that said money were because they were in a lack of. The people that were not in lack of had a purpose, something bigger. And then the people that are really just aware, it's a combination of both, right? Because we all want money because we all want something more than what we have. It's just natural. But to know, okay, somebody asked me like, oh, you're going to retire because I've got my 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 7, 10-year plan. And I said, well, I will never retire from being productive. I will never retire from making a difference in the world around me and the people around me. Now, if I do that wisely, it will yield revenue, right? But if you lead with that, if the purpose behind what you're doing is to make money, then you're going to fall short. Because motivation is fueled by purpose and passion. So that's back to like what we were talking about, big whys, your passions, your purpose. If you don't have one attached to your goal, it's not going to happen. It's just going to feather away. Because even in building businesses, sometimes it takes years, right, to get things up. And they say every business takes 3 to 5 years to be, financially successful. You can lose a lot of motivation and steam and partnership and so if there's not constant progress, keeping that dopamine, going, you can get really distracted and disgruntled and things can fall apart before you ever knew that they could, your true potential. So that's where it's like, okay, joyful living is my big umbrella brand. I go big or go home. So what I'm building is multifaceted and it's big. But it starts with singular things that will have one brand, one logo, one purpose. And the mission, vision, and values behind it is to live a joyful life. And if you think about it, and again, I'm a numbers person, a formulas person, I don't care what your big why is. The common denominator behind all big whys is a joyful life.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It really is.
Yeah.
However you define that.
Yeah.
So that's from here to the end. Like that's my definition of success from here on out is a joyful life. But I've defined mine, and mine is very big, very full, and very experiential.
I love that. It's so clear that you are locked in on a vision that is bigger than yourself, and that is like deep in your core. It's not just a fluffy mission statement put up on a wall. Like you can tell just the way you talk and live your life. It is.
Oh, I can't wait to tell you so much more about it when it's ready.
I know. I can't wait to hear you. We'll have to have you back on.
Yeah, seriously. Absolutely.
Well, Cosette, thank you so much for giving us your time, your wisdom. I mean, you are just a well of depth and information and wisdom for me. I'm leaving this feeling like I got the golden goose of it because I got to be here and grow from it the most. But thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.